Okay, welcome everyone to our Friday afternoon Planning and Heritage Committee meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Do we have any declarations of conflicts?
None.
Seeing none, can I have an approval of the agenda?
Moved.
Moved by His Worship, seconded by Councillor Beck. An adoption of the minutes from our Planning and Heritage Committee meeting from March the 5th.
Moved.
Moved by His Worship, seconded by Councillor Beck. Any business arising from those minutes? Your Worship?
None.
Oh, okay, great. All right, we'll move right into our discussions, and I'll turn this over to our guests today, and it is the Catherine G. Hennessy Lecture Series. Over to you all.
Madam Chair, can I just interject first? So I want to present Ken Kelly. Ken is a legend. So Ken was part of Stellan Kelly, who developed our official plan and our zoning development bylaw back in the late 90s that was passed by council in 1999. So when we were out for dinner last night, we got a photo, and I sent that photo to Hap Stelling, and Hap said, "Is his wife still with the Green Party?" And his wife Joanne was with us last night, and we had a great time, but he's got a ton of background history, corporate history in this whole file, and I think it's great that he has taken the time to come with Kim, who's also a former member of council, former chair of planning and development, so we have all the experts coming to us today, and I'm very pleased that you're both here.
And Ken, you probably know that we have embarked on the rewrite of a new official plan. We're hoping to have that ready by September, which then will prompt all those changes to our zoning and development bylaw. Yeah,
Maybe I can add something to my presentation next week,
lovely.
or
Yeah.
next month.
And when you're speaking, you have to just use the mic here, and that way we can get you
That
on.
was an aside to the deputy mayor.
Madam Chair, Your Worship, members of council and staff, I'd like to start just by talking just for a few minutes about the Catherine Hennessy Lecture Series. You might not know about it. It began after a dinner that the city held in 2010 to honor the contributions of Catherine Hennessy to the city of Charlottetown, particularly in the areas of urban planning and heritage preservation. The dinner was a big success. It was sold out, 500 tickets sold. There was an auction that we held, and an amount of money was raised. And after the dinner, the city contributed an amount to that sum of money and created the Catherine Hennessy Endowment Fund. And Catherine has defined the purpose of the fund, which is to create learning opportunities that enhance urban planning and the appreciation of heritage preservation. So here we are with Ken Kelly, who is going to do the next lecture, and there hasn't been a lecture since 2017. So we're very excited that Ken is here to do the next lecture. And we've had 2 days of very interesting meetings with stakeholders, and I'm just going to turn it over to Ken, and he can give you a few details about that.
Madam Chair, just before Kim turns it over to Ken, so what's the purpose? Is Ken going to define the purpose of today or what you've done over the last 2 days? Is it gathering information to incorporate?
It's meeting with stakeholders just to talk about people who are involved in the city in various capacities, just to talk about the issues and challenges facing the city and their perspectives on solutions and how we grow as a city, meeting the needs of our citizens.
Thank you so much for creating the time to meet this afternoon. In terms of an agenda, I don't see myself talking any length of time at all. I'd rather make this a dialogue. And I think you as council lead the way in that. You're always seeking the input from citizens of Charlottetown, the visitors to Charlottetown. What are we doing right? What can we do better? And I think that's what I want to develop in this presentation that I would make next month is boy, oh boy, Kim is amazing. She has arranged for such a spectrum of individuals that we've been meeting yesterday and today, be they the service providers, be they architects, planners, developers, CADC, all of you. Talk about learning experiences in Catherine's, the Catherine Hennessy speakers program. This future speaker has learned so much. I've been like a dry sponge on a monsoon day. I just soaked up everything that everyone was saying to me. And that's, I guess, what I would like to do this afternoon is kind of turn that back to you. And if you'd be good enough to contribute some of your insights and what you as a committee have been grappling with and where you think the opportunities lie in continuing the development of Charlottetown. And, if I may, I guess the first question I'd pose is what, and without putting you on the spot, but what do you, what are you most proud of? What is it about your city that resonates for you, but you think others might share?
I'll take a stab at that. As someone who's lived here for 63 years, I love my city. And as someone who has the good fortune of working as a part-time tour guide in the summer, I get to share my city with visitors. So it's always interesting, I find, to hear their perspective on our city and what they have to say about Charlottetown. And, I'm regularly impressed, I guess would be the best way to put it. The most common, consistent theme is, I didn't know Charlottetown had what it had to offer. Like they come here and they say, I heard about Charlottetown, I heard about Prince Edward Island, I heard about Anne of Green Gables. And then they come and they walk around our city and they cannot believe it. And I don't know how many people that say, do you know the name of a real estate agent that I could call? I'd like to move here. Your people are so friendly. The city is so walkable. The city has maintained its character. They love the quality of restaurants and offerings that we have. When you tell them about what the Confederation Center has to offer in terms of theater and that sort of stuff. And all this within a 20-minute drive to go to a beach and get out of the craziness of the city, if you will. Like the buzz. Got to get away from the buzz. So sometimes when you live in a place, you sometimes tend to maybe, take it for granted, or you kind of get so used and accustomed to the way things are that you kind of forget about how great a place it is. And I like that fact that when I get those visitors to come in and have the chance to talk to them about Charlottetown and have the chance to talk about Prince Edward Island and take them around, and when they see it, it's just, that's heartwarming.
Yeah.
And it kind of reinforces what, we not say we're perfect. I don't tell them all the warts of the city, the city by any means, which there are, right? There's challenges that we deal with, but when you look at it in the big picture, it really reinforces the pride that you have in your city. And so I don't think there's a better place to live myself, but I'm totally biased, and I don't mind saying that. And I tell people when they come, I said, get ready, because you're going to hear a lot of gushy stuff about Prince Edward Island and Charlottetown, and they're okay with that. So, but anyway, I think that's what we got to keep reminding ourselves, is that there is a tremendous amount of great things. Great things happen here, Charlottetown. Great things happen here. It's right on the screen, right? That's our logo. And there are great things happen here. For a place of, what's our population, 38,000, something like that? I think we're welterweights winning the heavyweight division, really. And so I think there's a lot of tremendous stuff that we have, and I think we just got to continue to build upon strengths that we do have and keep trying to make it even better.
That's fantastic. If you don't mind my jumping in
Sure, yeah.
before we move along. When Kim and I were meeting with the various groups that we had a great conversation this morning in which one of the individuals said, you know, when I first went to Toronto, I went, wow. But what we have here in Charlottetown is a different type of inspiration and excitement. It goes from the wow, isn't this big, to isn't this wonderful? And you know what? There's room for the whole spectrum on that. And I think that's perhaps one of the things that you will be continuing to focus on, which is that awe factor. You know, that people are going, how charming, how wonderful. And it's not only the built environment, it's the social environment in which people are so characteristically welcoming to everybody. Who's going next?
Okay. So Ken, I think you've come at the right time. Again, as I said at the beginning, your background with the city, going back with HAP and development of our OP. Now, as the deputy said to us, we're going through a complete overhaul of the official plan, which, as you know, trickles down into our zoning and development bylaws. And just at the same point of this whole discussion, we applied for the HAF, Housing Accelerator Fund. And we've received 10.1 million. And Jason can put up on the screen the 3-year plan that we have with, I think, 8 initiatives. And we'll make sure you get a copy of it because it is public information. And I think that it's a great starting point for you because you're going to look at what we have to do as a city that's growing. We have a growth management study that was put together by Upland Planning out of Toronto in collaboration with CBCL.
Yes.
And O2, which is a part of that Upland consulting firm effort to find out where we're at, where we're going. So by 2050, we're looking at the population in Charlottetown increasing by another 30,000 plus. So we have to accommodate for that. We're going to have to build housing to absorb that new population, that commercial activity, that institutional. Just a lot of factors will be rolling at the same time. And last spring, we started the process of looking at the comprehensive review of the official plan. And Upland identified 3 corridors coming into the city. You're probably familiar with them. Malpeque Road, University Avenue. To the east would be St. Peter's Road, Longworth Avenue. And then to the west would be Lower Malpeque Road, North River Road. So they've identified areas where we can go with that missing middle, or that gentle infilling that we want to encourage. And we talked about this last night, about some of the potential development in the downtown. You know, it's better to go up than out, because our out is getting smaller. We've always been known as the 1 million acre farm, and I think we were all at the FPEIM, Federation of Prince Edward Island Municipalities annual meeting in Surrey. I believe it was last fall, early in the fall, where we're now, instead of 1 million acres, we're down to about 550,000 acres because of development, erosion, and so forth. So as a city, we have to be looking at how we grow. And grow is grow up, and instead of growing out. And I know Charlottetown is a small city, but we have big city problems. You look at mental health, You look at drug addiction. You look at the unhoused, unemployment. You know, these are all issues that other municipalities, big and small, are facing all across this country, all across North America. And I think as a council, I think we're small enough to realize that we can do a lot more if we keep talking about it. We have to talk about our unhoused. We have to talk about our mental health crisis. We have to talk about our drug addiction crisis. We have to deal with them rather than just say it's going to go away. It'll go away, but we'll just let it pass. It's not going to pass. We have to be involved. And I think this council is very involved in how we look at our community. And we had a budget workshop in November of 2023, and we came up with 5 themes, 5 priorities. First one, public safety. We know public safety is an issue. It's all about law and order. It's about getting our streets safe and secure again. And I'm not saying that Charlottetown is faced with a lot of crime, with a lot of issues that, cause a lot of insecurity. No, we want to get ahead of this before we get behind it. The second, infrastructure upgrading. And for me, infrastructure upgrading is not just about highways, sidewalks. It's also about the super internet highway. That is fiber network. We have to develop fiber network because if we want to develop a city, we have to be a smart city. So you can work from home, and your home could be in Toronto, but you're now living in Charlottetown doing some work because you want to be away from that big city, but still have the capability via internet, via any way of communication to work from somewhere remotely. Third priority, parks and recreation. Big issue, and you'll see, like I showed you, the plan that is proposed for Malpeque Road with 1,880 units. As you said right away, where's the green space? Where's the space for people to get out of their building and to have, touch grass or touch something that is natural? Arts and culture, big issue, and it is, and what we have, and I know we all agree in this room, I know for sure, we have the Confederation Centre of the Arts. It was built in 1964 to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the Charlottetown Conference. And with Steve Bellamy, the new CEO at the centre, he's looking at a new vision for the centre. He's looking at getting away from that 60s, that concrete look, sort of that Soviet look of a building. He wants to expand that look. And he's looking at a $74 million renovation. And he's getting funding from the province. He's getting funding from the federal government. And hopefully from us too. Next door is the Provincial Assembly, the Province House. It's a Parks Canada project. They're going into year 5 of the restoration at $145 million. And when that is done, that'll be part of the Province House Historic District, and hopefully will incorporate the newly renovated Confederation Centre. And that's right in the heart of this great city that we call home, that we call Charlottetown. So we have a lot of pluses when it comes to being the capital city, being the birthplace of a nation, and having this main frame right in the center of our city, the historic 500 lots. No different than the old Quebec or old Montreal. We have something that we have to protect. And we can protect it by modernizing it. Like, for example, what we talked about last night, the Cays development down on Queen and Dorchester and Water. There's a mixture of heritage and there's a mixture of architecture of today. You see it in old Quebec, you see it in old Montreal, mixing the old with the new, because we're adapting to our surroundings. And the last is transit, is our number 5, which I see and I believe is very important. And Kim can tell you, we've always been fighting for and asking for transit. And back in 2005, when we were on council, that was when the first transit buses started to roll. And now we are 19 years later, and with over a million users, thanks to a PPP, private-public partnership with T3 Mike Castian Group. And it's working, and I want to see it work much further beyond where it's covering now. It has to go beyond its boundaries, because the more people we get it out of their cars and into transit, the more that we can make this a more walkable, livable city that we call Charlottetown. So combine those themes, combine the overall or the complete review, comprehensive review of our official plan and developing new new zoning development bylaws, combined, linked with this half housing accelerator funding and the objectives that we have to achieve, which is we have to increase net residential density. That has to be a focus. Now, as the Premier said at the Rotary Club Premier's dinner, he said, a lot of people don't like change, but we have to make change. And, some of us will suffer at the polls because of it, but you know what? Change has to happen, and I think we can do it where we can try to put it out there as much as we can and repeat it as much as we can so that it can be absorbed by those that will be affected when we talk about the NIMBYs. And look, we're all NIMBYs when we think of it, but I think we got a lot of work to do. And I appreciate that Kim has come up with you coming over here, getting feedback from stakeholders, developers, CADC. I'm glad you met with CADC, because CADC is an economic generator for this city and has been since 1974. Halifax has looked at the CADC and they said, we wish we had a Halifax Area Development Corporation like CADC. So it's worked and it's going to continue to work. So hopefully you'll be able to get lots of information from lots of people, and I'm waiting to be at your lecture series in a month,
April 18th.
in April.
Mark it on your calendars, everyone.
Yep.
April the 18th.
April the 18th.
The Confederation Center Library Learning Center.
Yeah.
Charlottetown. Yes, the back room. I said Confederation
Yes, you
Center.
did.
Yeah.
You know more than I do.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Your worship, in the vein of public-private partnerships, I always think of that, particularly when you're working in a collaboration, be it with the municipality and its residents, or the municipality and its developers. You've got to have purpose. What is it that we're focused on? You got to have persuasion in convincing everybody this is what we need to do as we move forward, and then perseverance. And in that vein, I want to compliment you as a committee and all of your predecessors, because when we created that official plan in 1999, there were some proposals that we included that weren't fully endorsed with the 500 lots. And looking at the official plan now, with all of the refinements that have been made, yikes, that's a beautifully polished portion of the official plan. So hats off to everybody as you move forward in continuing to not only stabilize, but to intensify the use of those properties.
Madam Chair, just want to give one historical note here. When the vote was taken in 1999 on the official plan in this chamber, the vote went 4-3 in favor. And you could imagine who voted against it, but it was 4-3. And here we are. He's back.
Clearly, you were going to do a better job than we did back in 1999.
No, she's the chair.
When was the 500 lots? Sorry, I don't have was it 2013, 500 lots got created?
2011.
2011. And Ken, did you have anything to do with that? That was a total separate entity. Who developed that?
It started under Kim Devine. She was chair.
Catherine Hennessy.
Yes, but in terms of
Right, yes.
carrying it through.
I would
Who
never-
facilitated that project? Like, I mean, like in
Was that Rob-
Uplands,
was that
Uplands or
Acoustics?
in O2 or
It was Rob LeBlanc,
Yeah, it was Acoustics.
who?
Acoustics, Rob LeBlanc, which is now
now known as Fathom.
Fathom Studios.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All All right.
You deserve a lot of credit, and it illustrates that over time, it's teamwork that's going to achieve our objectives, isn't it? It's not a solitary soul. As valuable and as indispensable as Catherine Hennessy has been in the history of this city and the protection of its built heritage, it requires everybody to share that vision, even though it took a while. I clearly wasn't convincing enough when I was doing my bit. Madam Deputy Mayor, here.
Oh,
We're
sorry,
gonna
you go ahead, Lynn.
Well, I think you both have pretty well covered it. I was just going to build on what his worship said, and that was the importance of finding that balance, building up in our corridors and our nodes, but also being very mindful of our heritage and preserving. As birthplace of a nation, we want to make sure that we do preserve our heritage at the same time as finding ways to address this tremendous population growth that's coming and that has already come and will continue to come. So, yeah. That's all I got.
Many years ago, I had the privilege of working for the Winnipeg Core Area Initiative, and it was the first urban development agreement in the country, and really the first and the last. It's too bad it wasn't repeated, but it was a unique partnership amongst the three levels of government, working with the private sector through 13 programs. And I always look at that as it should be a model for every community across this country. And as Kim and I have met with the groups that we have, to see some of the visions and the excitement about realizing some of those visions made me think of the Core Area Initiative and how, excuse me, your MP here, MP Casey, and ACOA, who have been, I think, great partners already. I wonder whether they might step it up with you and your provincial government to ensure that, hey, we want to create a kind of a unique program without sidelining Summerside, because across the country there was Winnipeg. It was the only city. There was no competition. There was no need to duke it out with Portage la Prairie. But you've got Summerside, which is a sister city. But I wonder if there's something for Charlottetown that might be developed amongst the three levels of government. Very generous.
One of the things that has always, I've always had a great appreciation for is the foresight of whoever conceived of Central Park in New York, whoever conceived of Point Pleasant Park in Halifax, Victoria Park in Truro. I don't know if you've ever been to Victoria Park in Truro. It's like this beautiful little oasis in the middle of
Stanley
the...
Park in Vancouver.
Stanley Park in Vancouver, right?
Yeah.
So last spring I went over, a few years ago I went, my wife and I traveled to Savannah, Georgia. I don't know if you've ever been to Savannah, Georgia.
It's beautiful.
Outstanding. It's just this place, and it's like this little magical land but it's a character preservation that is beyond. Last spring, my wife and I had the chance to go over, and we were cycling in the Netherlands. And what always struck me, and we were in Amsterdam, Utrecht, Gouda, and Rotterdam. And what struck me in all those, they were all very distinctly different. And they were all neat in their own ways. But what the commonality was, they had this little circle in the middle of all those cities, of all those municipalities that has been maintained. And right now, a lot of them are symbolic buildings that are there, but they are clearly the hub of all of those cities. And you can go into them and you can pinpoint, where's the heart of Gouda? You can go right to it. Where's the heart of Utrecht? You can go right down. And it makes me think when I think of those things and I think of how those elements have been preserved and how significant they have become, it reinforces our need, or my belief, and I'm speaking personally here, but of how special of a thing we have going here with our 500 lots. And I think it's important to understand that over a course of time, as municipalities and areas bloom, take on, 24-story high-rise buildings and whatnot, the character, the heritage, does nothing but appreciate over time. And I go back, again, whoever would have thought that Central Park would have meant so much to current-day New Yorkers? Imagine trying to do something in Central Park these days. It would never happen, right? And rightly so. Trying to do something and change the character of Savannah, Georgia, not going to happen. Charlestown, I know I haven't been in Charleston, but I think they have similar zoning and development bylaws that maintain their heritage preservation. And I think that's something that, as we try to move forward in a progressive way, we still have to preserve and respect the heritage qualities that we have. And that's the balancing act that I'm sitting here as a current counselor trying to, I don't think I'm struggling with it, but I know that that's going to be something that we will have to collectively grapple with over the course of time. So how do we do that smartly? How do we do that appropriately? How do we target, kind of what his worship was saying, is how do we get that net density that we're trying to look for? And how do we allow our community to advance, to incorporate future residents, because we want people to come and live here and make Charlottetown home. But we also want to preserve what we have. And Islanders, as we well know, do not like change terribly well, right? Change is great, you go first, sort of mentality, right? And we're all guilty of it. So it's kind of a long-winded way of leading into my question, but I'm also, I guess I'm kind of curious, Ken, your thoughts on the 500 lot area, the progress that we will be looking at. And also, there's been an expressed desire to reduce our to become less car-centric, to increase our active transportation, to enhance that and build upon that. Because, we are relatively flat, relatively speaking. It's not like biking around Halifax, right? I wouldn't mind biking around Charlotte. I don't want to bike anywhere in Halifax. Thank you very much. But how do we kind of make all that? I guess I'm kind of curious your thoughts in terms of, how does that all? How do we make? And I think of the Netherlands again of that, because they took Amsterdam became the bike mecca of the world because their option was they were so car centric. If I understand this correctly, there was a plan that they were going to build all these overpasses to go over all these buildings. And they said, no, that's not happening. So they changed it, and now they've become what it's become. And it's kind of mind-boggling what has been accomplished. So I guess I'm wondering, how can we incorporate some of those elements into our city? And, it would be such a great addition if we can preserve, progress, what's another P in there? And protect, I guess, too, right? So, but like it's that balance of advancing and preserving. And I think that's kind of the challenge if we're kind of looking at where we're going as a city. We've identified areas of need to grow. What do we have to do in order to protect and balance that growth with our preservation of the jewel that we have? Because it really is a jewel. And I think that jewel is only going to get more precious over time. And anyway, just kind of a long-winded question, but just maybe your thoughts on some of that stuff.
What you've been able to do in protecting the 500 lots is preserve the ideals, aspirations, and achievements of forefathers, foremothers here in Charlottetown. I think that's you were synonymous with charm. So you've done that with the creation of the bylaw, and things will advance. I think, Kim, I can never remember the building down Queen Street that
the
I
Kay's
love.
building.
The Kay's building, the glass one.
That's the Campbell-Lee.
The Campbell-Lee. Oh, yeah, the Campbell-Lee, the law office. I think that, devil's in the details, I think, isn't it, Councillor? You are called upon as a committee to make some very difficult decisions as it relates to development within the community. And I think that one that was conducted by previous committee members really was difficult in as much as it used such totally different materials that were not characteristic of the bricks and mortar that we have, but it escaped to what today's ideals and technology might be. And the massing is beautiful, the alignment with the windows, the height, in my mind, I don't think you could find a better example. And you could search the country. I love that example. And so what we've got to remember is we've got to remain aspirational for those who are going to be, maybe they're rehabilitating a building, but maybe they're proposing, like the Holman's building, what a number of people would call facadism, in which the lower levels are protected. But what you want on the upper levels is something that contributes and reinforces that charm and distinctiveness of the city. And that's not easily done. How do you legislate good design? I think that's going to be one of your biggest challenges as you look at the official plan and the enacting bylaw. Is there an opportunity there to encourage continued development? There's always the challenge. I've had the pleasure of living in 10 communities across the country, and each has had its own particular downtown challenges. And in Moncton, which is one of the cities we lived in, you had this big magnet was the 1 million square feet of Champlain Mall, but you also then had the power center up there in Trinity Drive that was developed, and boy, oh boy, did the downtown suffer as a result of that. And you're going to have a number of challenges with development, sometimes some very high-density developments being proposed in the periphery. How do you kind of balance that with maintaining that central role of downtown? Because downtown Moncton, just like downtown Halifax, is not like the vibrant downtown that you have here. I had a great time working for downtown Victoria for 12 years. Oh my goodness, just as beautiful as your city is, Victoria still has such charm, but had such unique stores. And from 2004 to 2016, I witnessed kind of a waning, like people could not sustain their businesses. And one day, we had a great office. We were right across from City Hall. We looked out into the square, Centennial Square. One day, a wonderful lady walked through the door, full of indignation. She said, "I haven't been downtown for 2 years, and look at the state of it." And I quickly said to her, the state of downtown is fully dependent on you and every one of your fellow citizens. You've got to be able to support the businesses, or they're not going to be able to remain open and providing the goods and the skilled service that comes along with it. Something that concerns me, and I'd love to, maybe have a short discussion on online shopping. Because of COVID, between 2018 and 2020, online shopping increased 47%, and with a value of $27 billion. Between 2020 and 2022, it jumped from there. Well, these are compounding impacts on our communities. And I say communities because while our retailers suffer, and you know what? I'm not pointing the finger at anybody because during COVID, that was an anxious time. Well, everybody talks about retail therapy. You got to get out there. You got to, let's just escape from all of this. There was very few options except for online shopping. And they've developed quite an impressive arsenal of goods and services. But that's going to impact that wonderful reinvestment cycle that has historically existed within communities of reinvesting in the community itself. With online shopping, you go, boy, oh boy, there's jobs created. Those individual drivers driving around town, they're not supporting the teams, the clubs. They're not reinvesting in other goods and services that might be produced and provided locally. So, I admire all of you for offering to serve your communities. Elected officials get a bum rap at times, and I encourage you to continue that steadfast, straightforward course that you're on.
Well, thank you for that. Anyone else want to share a little bit more? I know that as we embark on engaging the community again on the official plan, is to speak to what Councillor Beck had said, there are going to be there'll be a lot of resistance because we do have to do some really hard things and we have to make some pretty, probably a lot of drastic changes at the same time as preserving our heritage, and that's building up, that's potentially eliminating all R1 zoning where appropriate. Like, there's a lot of things that us as council will need to be able to communicate that to the public as we go through this process. Yeah. And we all have to become YIMBYs instead of NIMBYs, right? Yes, in my backyard, yeah.
Madam Chair, could I just follow up with what Councillor Beck was talking about parks? We do have a beautiful park. It's another Victoria Park. No, I know that. But Victoria Park in Truro, first time I went there, I said, wow, this is amazing. And it was the same with where my son now lives. He lives in Dundas West, and in his backyard is the Trinity Bellwoods Park, which bridges Dundas West with Queen Street West. Beautiful park, loaded with sports fields, areas for tennis. Like, it's just unbelievable. It's a huge space. And you know what? We are having these discussions. These discussions we're keeping them sort of below the radar. And when you bring it up, causes a lot of concern. So I think, we get a good time, perfect time in here too. When you talk about that Winnipeg, was it the downtown revitalization with 3 levels of government?
Core area initiative,
Yeah.
because it was the 10 square miles.
Yeah.
It wasn't limited to just downtown. It was the very essence of the inner city.
So you come up with a plan to develop it, right? Well, so we have a piece of property that everybody loves, but we have to be careful how we talk about it. Experimental Farm. So Experimental Farm is bounded by Belvedere Avenue. You know the park.
Yes, I do.
There.
Yes.
And it's now surplus land. It's still owned, operated by Agricultural Canada. They have moved those operations out to Harrington, where they have 1,500 acres. But as we know, on that property is the Ravenwood House. It's a 200-year-old house. It's, again, we've said this about some other properties around here, it's being demolished through neglect. We need a plan. And I think this is a time for the federal, provincial, municipal governments to come together like they did for Winnipeg on the downtown revitalization plan, to come up with something. And no, I'm not talking about let's put condos and high-rises. We need a plan because there's 84 acres there. And there's pathways going through there. And as you know, Ken, there are buildings that were chicken coops and there were greenhouses. They're all just sitting there. And they're being, Canada is doing a good job of maintaining the property, but we need a plan to show what we can do with that green space. That's a great space. And when you look at it, take a drone footage from it, it's geographically the center of the Charlottetown, the 7 communities. So that is where we can look at. And again, let's not raise the fears and someone going to the media, look, Brown is saying that he wants to develop experimental farm. No, what I'm talking about is we need a long-term plan. Why do we just have to sit back and wait for something to happen? Let's be proactive. And I think that, I think we can get other levels of government on board, and NGOs, non-governmental organizations involved in this big plan. First Nations, Ken, with our First Nations, Onaway and the Mi'kmaq Confederacy, I'm sure that they would love to be part of some future plan for that land. But it's got a lot of potential to be a great green space, to be that, and I know a former councillor from Ward 6 referred to it as Charlottetown's Central Park. I think he was a little far off there, but we're not the density as of New York, but it's got a lot of potential, and I think that's something we have to look at. And I'm just going to go back to the HAF initiatives. There are 8. The first is what we're going through now, which is to implement a new official plan and zoning development bylaw. Initiative 2, and I'm just going to, there are 8 of them, as I said. Initiative 2 is, and of course, each of these initiatives have milestones. Initiative 2 is accessory dwelling unit program. So you're familiar with that. You have a house and you have enough, and I think for Charlottetown, you have to be over 0.5 acres to build an ADU, an accessory dwelling unit. If we could reduce that or just eliminate that, we could provide more housing. That's number 2. Number 3 is, again, I give lots of credit to Janice Harper, Sue Hendricken, or Sue Fraser, I still call her Sue Hendricken, and our CAO, Eleanor Mohammed, that worked on these initiatives. They're great, and I think they're all achievable. Implement e-permitting for seamless data entry and interdepartmental review and approval. Another one is number 4, parking strategy. This is the one I like because you hear this from developers. These parking developments are they impede development. Just let us build and let dwellers find their own parking. Well, that doesn't always work. But it's a parking strategy to reduce parking requirements and allow for increased density. So if we talk about the 199 Grafton Street proposal, the APM proposal, 8 stories, as I said to you last night, the first 3 stories will be parking, 1 below ground, 2 above grade. So we're working on accommodating parking through different strategies. Initiative 5, redevelopment for higher density multi-unit apartments. We have to go higher instead of go out. So, and again, these initiatives, I think how they laid them out, Eleanor, Sue, and Janice, we can, work with them not just as planners, but counselors. We can have input, and so can the community. And this is the one I think you would like, Ken, clarify design requirements to promote multi-missing middle dwelling units. Love these new terms I'm learning. Missing middle, gentle infill. I could be a planner. But here's initiative number 7. Implement density bonusing and clarify design standards for affordable units. Okay? If we're going to put up affordable housing, let's give some design that makes it part of the neighborhood, part of these nodes that upland planning is trying to create nodes of people living and working together and able to live in a beautiful neighborhood. And Initiative 8 is to remove exclusionary zoning, promote higher density while permitting up to 4 units off right. Citywide facilitate increased densification by enabling 4-story buildings around 800 meters, UPEI, University of Prince Edward Island, Holland College. You'll see some of the applications that are in the hopper right now coming to council are dealing with these, addressing these issues that are in these initiatives. And again, just as the chair said, the deputy mayor about, as appropriate, we also, I think, use the language where technically feasible, especially for this one property for 4 units. Lori and I live in the corner of Spring Park Road and Vale Drive. It's all property. So for us to add an accessory dwelling unit, it's going to be pretty hard. To add maybe a basement unit, could be possible. Could be possible to do something with the first floor. So you get 3 units. So where it's technically possible, we can make it happen. So I think, this will be sent to you. We'll email this to you. And I have on this thumb drive all the presentations that we made to the standing committee at the provincial legislature on housing and social development, housing and health. These have all the documents that are associated with our planning process and what we want to do as a community, as a capital city, one of 14 in this country, birthplace of a nation, what we want to do to make this city more livable for work, play, and to raise a family. Thank you.
Hear, hear.
Well said, Your Worship. Anybody else? Ken, do you have anything else you want to
You know what?
share?
Councillor Beck, as you were talking about, how do we ensure that we're going, and I'm sorry I neglected to include that in my answer, but how are we going to do the best possible job in preserving the 500 lots? I know this was unique, and I go back to the Winnipeg Core Area Initiative. It was a district that I was responsible for immediately north of Portage in Maine that included the early skyscrapers and the warehouses. A good 1/3 of that 5 million square feet of space was either underutilized or vacant. So it required some real impetus to get that development going. And what we did was create $10 million worth of incentives. We created what was a very neat project. It was called, and this is relevant to Charlottetown, Art Space. It was a 6-story warehouse that was underutilized, and we basically gifted it to the arts community, and it has become a genuine arts growth center and continuing support center right there in the middle of what we've dubbed the Exchange District. But the other thing was we developed a program to assist so that we were not only encouraging, we were giving demonstrable assistance, financial assistance, technical assistance to allow the revitalization of buildings. So initially we started off with grants of $50,000 for the rehabilitation of buildings, $15,000 if you wanted to create a new business. And then when the core was renewed, all of those monies were increased. It seems very little now, but those were, 1981 to $91. And, something as simple as the city considering tax abatement program, I just leave it at tax abatement, but also grant programs, and they don't have to be a killer. And the beauty of, instead of taking money outright out of your pocket to provide a grant, tax abatement has become a well-accepted vehicle to support the right type of development. You wouldn't necessarily give it to anybody and everybody that was developing something, but for some special projects, that might be what might carry it over the top. Anyway, that's...
And I agree with you 100%. Everyone has their own idea of special. And everyone has their own idea of what's appropriate. And that's, I agree. And kind of going back to where we're talking about, some of our stuff, we want to make sure that it is appropriate, and that it does fit. And I'm sorry, sometimes it may, although you may think it's the best project in the world, we're the ultimate body that is, I guess, is deciding whether it's special enough, if you will. And not to negate anyone's aspirations or to quell anybody's dreams, but the reality is we have to make decisions as to what we think. And as long as we're trying to continue to do the right thing, hopefully we won't go wrong very often. And I think that's just trying to make sure that we make the best informed decision that we can, make the best decision for the right reasons, and try and come up with what fits for Charlottetown. Because, we're doing this stuff right across Canada, and what is for Winnipeg does not. Charlottetown's unique. Moncton is different from Charlottetown. Halifax is different from Charlottetown. Quebec City. I mean, so we, again, focus on what we need and what our natural attributes are, natural strengths, areas that we can improve upon, and focus on our little slice of heaven right here on the east coast of Canada.
Are you the director of tourism as well?
Well, I think in another life I was. I'm the unofficial ambassador for tourism in Prince Edward Island. But I love where I live. I don't care. I'll say it to anybody. I wouldn't want to live anywhere else. And let's continue to make Charlottetown the best place it can be. And that's really what we're trying to do. And hopefully we'll succeed.
Well, we're also really fortunate with the rebuild of the Planning and Heritage Department under Eleanor's leadership. We've got an incredible staff in the Planning and Heritage Department, which is going to be extremely necessary and helpful as we weave our way through the new official plan. So kudos to Eleanor for that. So.
Madam Chair, you've been sitting on planning. This is your second term. Kim sat on it for 2 terms. I think I sat it on for 2 years, and then they got rid of me after the second year because, I don't know, they just told me they had to move to water and sewer, and that's where I went to. Kim took over my job. That was an inside job. But no, you know what? You know this better than anyone can. When you talk about planning and you talk about people's homes and their property, that old adage, my home is my castle, it is really tough. And look, today I was speaking to someone about that planning department's not doing anything down there. Things are not going well. And I said, man, oh man, we add more staff, we're moving files quickly. And I was at a wake yesterday and someone said to me, I can't believe what you have on your next public meeting agenda, those 3 big files. Like, what time do you expect to get out? Well, it depends on how many questions come from this side of the room and not on the other side of the room. And I think it's a tough one because this is my home, I paid for it, and my mom, my dad owned this home, I lived in this neighborhood, and I don't want it to change. Well, things change, and we just have to make change a little more palatable, that people understand we don't do it so quickly that the blowback just won't go away. The resentment will be there forever. I think we can do it right, and I find that this council is very much involved in getting all the discussion on the floor rather than let it just ride by and keep quiet. We'll get by this one. I think the more you discuss issues and you bring out the pros and cons, and you give a good understanding to the residents and the citizens that live in this great city, that there'll be hopefully a little buy-in from more than you had the day before. So I'm really waiting to attend your lecture because I think, you get lots of information. We're going to give you lots of information. Plus, you've received lots of information from those that you met, the stakeholders, and like-minded groups, I think it's going to be a good springboard for us to keep this official plan review, comprehensive review going forward. So thank you very much. Thank you, Kim.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome, Your Worship, and thank you, everyone, for your great conversation and input on a Friday afternoon. And Kim or Ken, do you have anything else you wanted to share today? So now we just get to look forward to April 18th at the Charlottetown Learning Center, 7 PM?
7 PM.
Is that going to be live as well? Are you going to have Facebook Live?
That's a really good question.
I hope
think
you
we
do
should think
because I'm
about
in
that.
Australia at the time, so I would like to be able to see it, so, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Okay, well, if there's nothing else, any introduction of new business?
Nope.
Okay, motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Moved by His Worship,
Yep.
seconded by Counselor Beck. Thank you very much.
Thank you very
everybody.
much. Thanks, Ken. Thanks, Kim. Thank you.